thought leaders to show and share their views on important events and themes relevant today, how these will impact the future. Today's topic of discussion is India's healthcare sector, embracing the future with hope and courage. Today we have invited Dr. Gurpreet Sandhu, President of the Council for Healthcare and Pharma in India. Dr. Sandhu is the President of the Council for Healthcare and Pharma, which is a not-for-profit global think tank and advocacy forum. He has over 3 decades of experience in chemical, pharmaceutical, and healthcare sectors. He is also the founder of Reva Pharma and serves on the company's board of directors. He is also the chairman of Care India that operates in healthcare delivery services and has a chain of pharmacies. Dr. Sandhu is a remarkable business leader and has created numerous ventures in pharma and healthcare industries. He is also an advisor on the scientific board of the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. We also have with us today Dr. Nitin Batra, who is the head of our Amity Institute of Training and Development, which regularly conducts learning and development interventions for our corporate clients. Dr. Nitin Batra was earlier the global head of the brand innovation at Johnson & Johnson. He held senior marketing strategy roles at Pfizer and led strategy projects as a consultant at McKinsey. May I now request Dr. Sandhu to give us an overview of today's subject, and thereafter we will take on questions from the audience, and I will request the audience to post their questions on chat, and we will place them with Dr. Sandhu for his answers. Over to you, Dr. Sandhu.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Sharma. Firstly, I would like to thank Amity Global, the Amity Institute for Health, for Education, and Dr. Nitin Batra for having me joining this August session, which has been scheduled. The world of healthcare is the most important industry which we all have to look into because it drives the gross domestic product of a nation, number one. It drives the longevity of life. Third, the quality of living. As we progress from a developing nation to a developed world, which is the way we progress into the nomenclature of the global scenario, healthcare drives everything. Okay, and as I was sharing a couple of minutes back with Dr. Batra, that education and healthcare have to work in sync and in tandem going forward if the GDP and the image building exercise of a nation and communities have to happen. All right. Something very interesting to share with you. India is known today as the pharmacy of the world, but we have cultivated a big branding for India, to produce low cost, quality, accessible products, which in terms of the terminology of the industry is the generic products. These are products which have gone off patent, and in some cases there are challenges which the Indian industry has done phenomenal work in fighting the patent litigations and positioning generics so that the accessibility across the regulated and the emerging world is happening. Okay. Now, very important for you to understand, I'll just first lay out certain figures which will build the base of what subject we are going into and in our depth, and then we get into the cross questioning and share with you certain dynamics of this industry, and then take your queries to address them one by one. The pharmaceutical industry today in the world is around about $1.4 trillion, which is fairly very large. Okay, it is growing at a single digit today, but by 2023, it should be 1.6 trillion. Now, which takes a growth of around about 16% on a yearly basis. And the driver for this kind of a number base, what we're talking of, are the emerging markets. And when we talk about the emerging markets, yes, as you're all aware that, countries like China, India, countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and then we get into the Latino markets, they are the drivers. And then the next rim countries which are playing a very, very, very critical role are countries like Turkey, get into the CIS region, okay, and then Russia. So the evolution of life, the urbanization, the increasing middle class, and the higher income groups are driving the need of healthcare. And I think more so, I expect the growth to be even larger with this COVID scenario, which we are all facing today, has not only awakened the private sector, but also the governments across the world. And more so, the conversations which we have within our families today and across relations, okay, friends everywhere, we all talk about health today. Now, that means that the awakening is happening. If I look across pharmacies within our own business and outside the industry, sale of vitamins has gone up. People understand it's just what is required in a body, right? This will bring in a sea change of evolution of diagnostics, because if the diagnostics is right and affordability will lead to hospital visits, build up the primary and preventive health cares, and then dispensing of the medicine, right? India today, is still a very minuscule market. Don't take me in a wrong way. Okay, we are still at a number of around about $38 billion as a market. Okay, which is very small out of the 1.4 trillion when we talk about on a global basis, right? But out of the 38 billion, we as a nation are exporting around about 17.3 billion outside, and going forward, we should be looking at a number of 19 billion as an export. Okay, but our domestic market is very small because our per unit price realization in India is very low as compared to when we look into the larger developed economies. When we look at Japan, when we look at Germany, we look at France, we look at the United States of America. Very, very critical for you guys to understand that if you look at when we look at the largest markets in the world, the largest arena is the United States of America, which is roughly around about 750 billion, poised to be 750 billion by 2023. So that means it is the market which is driving the world, okay, forward. You look at Europe, which is around about 320 billion. Look at Japan, a nation which is around about 120 billion. Okay, so the growth exponent which we expect going forward, the numbers might be looking small for India, but as we as a nation, the urbanization getting built up, the healthcare dispensing taking place, the growth potential for India is very, very large, and this will not only result in the government spending, which will come forward, but give a huge impetus for job creation in healthcare. Number two, the most important will be building the longevity of life in our nation and improving the quality of life as the infusion of education and healthcare drives taking place. The most important thing which is missing today, okay, why we as a nation have been recognized as a pharmacy of the world, giving the world affordable medicines, but we as a nation have not invented a single product. Trust me, good work started in a company which is no longer existing, Ranbaxy. Dr. Reddy's, when Dr. Anji Reddy, the old promoter, was down there, and I still remember talking to Dr. Pravinder Singh since I have been associated with the company in the past. These two gentlemen worked hard to change and bring in the basic research into the industry. But unfortunately, the cost which we incur for R&D, the output, the banking industry does not understand. Okay, so I expect that the R&D has to be infused forward, and I am very happy Niti Aayog has finally recognized that, and their guidelines which are getting stipulated to make sure that this gets pushed on for a positive track for our nation. Number two, very important, is that a relationship between academia and R&D has to be cultivated, right? Which is a very common phenomenon when we look at the regulated world. When I look at the regulated world, I mean, if you look at United States of America, NIH, which is the driving force of the government, okay, the national health policy structuring, everything, they are spending around about $73 billion each year on basic research. The government funds this money to institutes, to small startups, to basic research organizations. They then are coming out with new technologies, new intellectual property products, where the hold gets on with the government because they have funded it, and then they are sold out to the private industry who will capitalize them to build them up. This is one way. EU5, they are spending around about 32 billion a year, and Japan is doing around about 27 billion. Now, this gives you a very awakening number that the potential for India, okay, is very large. Yes, we are spending, I would say, a very small number. We're only spending around about 500-700 crores, okay, from the government side, which is nowhere, okay, what the world will require. But going forward, I am very positive that the big pharma industry, when I say the big pharma, means the innovator companies, are looking to India with the new policy structuring, and could be that we as a nation become the pathway for basic research, and then the research structures have to be created around, NCR regions or Bangalore region, okay, because, or the Hyderabad area, because we need to bring in a talent pool of people who are either committed to this work, or the institutes which are there, next to these areas, can probably play a very pivotal role in cultivating this dynamics of getting the right people to work upon. Now you're very, very, very surprised, which is a looming story today, that we have COVID scenario, and when we look at the dynamics of the number, India is spending on a per capita basis, is only spending $27 on a health per annum, as compared to around about 3,300 in Australia, 3,800 in Japan, and in China. Okay, looking at the population mass, still they are far, far ahead. They are spending around about $350 per person in China. So this number, why I'm giving you, gives an outlay, that yes, the need is there. We have to do, the industry has to build either in public-private partnerships, or on a private level, or building the infrastructure going forward. The next important part is a very worrisome aspect. The spending by the government on the healthcare is 1% of GDP, right? Well, we are talking of that, and probably we expect that with this whole hit, what we are going through, probably the government is looking at a 2.5% investment going forward from the GDP towards the building of the healthcare infrastructure. But if you look at a nation like the United States of America, they are spending around about 14.3%. And if you look into a small nation like Austria, they're doing around about 8% of the GDP. And if you look at Australia, Australia is doing around about 13% of the GDP, which gives you that these nations have realized that healthcare is the most critical component to ensure that people, if they hold good health, they have longevity of life, the standards are better, the output will be better. End of the day, the output drives what best can be brought in. Now, as I expressed, Indian industry has done fairly well. We today are a self-sufficient nation in terms of the basic medicines, what are being available across the pharmacy structures, okay, in India. But the risks are looming on us because as the industry grew forward, we did not invest in the large-scale basic chemical manufacturing. And what is the technical terminology is active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is called the API, which is actually the seed to make the medicine. Either it is a capsule, tablet, or injectable product. The base product India manufactures around about 32% of it. The rest we are today living on China. This is a subject of big concern when we had the since we are going through a turmoil between the two nations. Okay, a lot was discussed by our honorable Prime Minister and the requisite sector ministries, but unfortunately, building a critical mass like this to fill the gap will take a long period of time. And I think my personal perception is rather than we getting into a structure, the parties' collaborative approach between the two nations will definitely ensure that the industry moves forward and the cost of medicines is sustained, because in the last practically 3 to 4 months, the base pricing coming out of China has increased from 10 to 14%, which impacts a common man for his basic medicine requirements. The most important thing which we all are today aware is that, India is not what we see, which is living in the cities. What is living for the future as a nation is the tier 2 and tier 3 cities in our part of the world, and there the healthcare is totally missing. Trust me, if you let's look at a state like Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh has invested, I would say, billions of dollars in building the primary and preventive healthcare, but it's really sad to say that if you go down, the minute we cross Greater Noida, if you get into a village structure, there is a structure lying there. There is a primary and preventive healthcare. The government has been very good in constructing, but either a doctor is not there, either a gynecologist is missing, or the diagnostic infrastructure is poor, or the medicine quality which is being dispensed from there or the pharmacy within the structure doesn't confirm in majority cases to the GMP compliance. What I mean by GMP, just to add to my friends who are on the viewership, is the good management practices which result in the regulatory compliances to ensure that since the product is being consumed by a human being, there are structures which are complying to ensure that the product quality and the efficacy is respected. Right. The second most important thing when we look into the healthcare is the number of beds which we require, per cap, as compared to the population as per the World Health Standards. We require one doctor per 1,000, and trust me, you'll be very surprised if I give you the working thought. We do not even probably will have with the kind of output which is coming out. There are only we have only 30,000. We have one doctor for 30,000 people in India. So, and even if you can look into the data, when we see the number of, we have 542 medical colleges, right, producing, good doctors every year. We have 30,000 medical graduates which get out of the institutes every year. This is a number, okay. But if you compare with the current population and the working path which I have calculated, to fill in the gap of what is required as per the WHO standards, okay, it will take us another 45 years. I'm again repeating, it will take us 45 years to fill the gap what is required, right? This is a very worrisome number. No doubt the government has been, especially across states, they've been talking that every district should have a medical college, but the cost of creating a medical college, as per the Indian standards, you require a big amount of money to do that. Whereas if you look into medical colleges which have been established outside, and even in the United States or in the Caribbean or in Latino markets, the cost of establishing a medical college is probably 1/10 what is being done into. And now the government of India has realized that they have to change the policy structure, and we are hopeful that if that is done, then the private sector should take a lead of injecting capital in creating medical colleges with the affiliation of a good hospital structure around it to build the needs going forward. If I do a comparison just for you, as I said, as per WHO recommendation, you need one doctor per 1,000 people. Germany leads the world with an average of 4.3 doctors per thousand, which is very, very high. And if you look at China, it's 2. So means China has built its critical mass, okay, not only in education in the last 5 years. Trust me, you'll be very surprised that China today has taken lead not only in large-scale base manufacturing, but ensuring that the dispensing of the basic medicines, basic right from anti-infectives to cardio to diabetes, okay, and creating the hospital needs, they are way ahead than a neighbor nation like us, okay, and having a larger population than us, as per the demographics which are available today. So, to summing up, what I would like to say is that the industry has great potential. It has 3 facets which are very critical to be looked into. One is the medical device and diagnostics. This is itself an industry, which is around about $750 billion as a market today, as an industry. Again, United States leads the way, followed by China. Third is Japan, and fourth is Germany, right? If I give you the figure of China, China as a market is around about $98 billion today, and India is $1 billion. And against out of the $1 billion, India is only exporting 400 million. It's a very sad example which I'm going to give you, but this is the reality. The basic surgical scissor, which is a very common medical device, right, used across India, be it a small city or a large city, right? Our quality of surgical scissor is poorer than that manufactured in Pakistan. I picked this example just to shake, and this is I've been voicing this example across my sessions, be it the private sector or the government sector, so that yes, we need to awake ourselves. And when I did investigation along with agencies and Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Pharma, I was surprised that what was told to me was that our cost of steel is high, and the right quality of steel is not manufactured in our nation. So I'm just talking of very stupid things or very basic things down here, but the aggregate solution is that the basic awakening has to come in. If we need to build the healthcare, because the most important thing is diagnostics, right? If the diagnostic infrastructure is there, which is supported by the medical devices, the patient knows what's the problem with him. He moves to the primary and preventive healthcare, because if you have to go to the tertiary hospitals, big hospitals, the cost is very high. You take a lot of time. If the primary and preventive healthcare take your need, and if there's a problem, he moves down to the larger hospital, and then only the medicine gets dispensed. So this cycle chain has to be emphasized. Our government has to say that yes, the need of the hour is building the healthcare system. If a healthcare system is built up and the government propagates that yes, they will invest 2.5% of the GDP into this arena going forward from 1.27, what has been actually the figures which have been seen for the last year, and they push and support the private sector, yes, to come forward, I think the dynamics will change, and it will be very fruitful that it will ensure the vision path of Niti Aayog and what our Honorable Prime Minister has been embarking upon, that we could be a $5 trillion economy. The healthcare will be a very major contributor. So that is one part of the system, right, which is critical for us to look into. The other part is, which I'll just take 2 more minutes before we get into the main frame, because the time remaining is you're hitting on the other side. The basic R&D, then the new generation medicines, biosimilars, peptides, biosimilars, and regenerative medicine are the future. Right? Gene therapy, you can reduce the cost. And this is something which probably we are trying to work upon with institutes, right, to see if gene therapy labs could be structured in institutes, because they will get a lot of work from the big research companies outside. You don't need critical scale in terms of land. even if an institute like Amity, which is around the corner, which is part of the NCR region, can structure a gene therapy lab, you just need, I would say, around about half an acre of land, which they can put down in a building structure, and the work starts happening. Our drug controller government of India, which is the main controlling body, definitely is very committed, along with the Ministry of Health, to ensure that the new generation vision, which is growing in a large way, should be built in. If you go to Japan, you'll be very surprised that if you go to a regenerative medicine lab, you can get your kneecap done in one day, and you can be walking out of that, vision outlet. You don't need large-scale structures. I can name you a company like Asahi Kasei, which is a very big conglomerate in Japan. They partnered with us, with my other pharmaceutical company, and their medical device infrastructure, they also have made an artificial kidney, and it's available. So there is a lot which is happening in the world, and we are the diabetic capital of the world. We are today the mental health capital of the world. Every suicidal death, we are the largest in number value. Okay, in terms of population, we are the largest in number value. People are not willing to accept this taboo. But trust me, we have every issue. But if this issue can be brought out with the need, with the society understanding the need, the families understanding the need of healthcare, I think it paves a new generation of business. It paves a new generation of understanding our body structure. It paves a new vision for the government to build infrastructure along with the private sector, which will lead our nation to the next level and fulfill the dream of us as a leading player in the top 3 going forward. Brigadier Sharma, I have laid the foundation, and then probably we can get into the question and answers which you have outlined. And besides that, if there are any questions coming from the audience, I will take them on, and then we could discuss it forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You have given us a very comprehensive and outline of the healthcare sector, and I'm sure you have covered everything which we needed to lay the foundation. My first question to you is, the healthcare industry is largely driven by services, which is around $137 billion today, or it will be by 2023. Pharma, which is about $55 billion, devices about $11 billion, and diagnostics $3 to $4 billion. Primary healthcare in India is about $13 billion. So what are the trends that you see over the next 5 to 10 years in the structure of healthcare in India? So you'll have to unmute.
Sorry about it.
Yes.
What I look upon, and what as a nation we need to do about it, the role of digital health is the future. You will see e-pharmacy structure, and you have seen in the last, I would say, last fortnight, larger houses grabbing each other. The M&A structure has started working upon, and new structures are being folded. You have even players like Amazon. You have the big boys from the US, and even Reliance acquiring a structure to create something for this nation. Telemedicine is the future. Okay. Medical tourism. Now, this year is very surprising. People don't cover it up, but I see that India will play a very important role in this medical tourism base. Today, we should be around about $4 billion as a market. When I say medical tourism, means that people from poorer countries, I would say, our neighboring countries, you look at Bangladesh, you look at Afghanistan, you look at Sri Lanka, you look at Indonesia, the people are, and the East African markets, they are all flocking into India, getting their medical services, and Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, are hubs today. Trust me, if you go down to Max in Saket, you will see a lot of foreigners walking around, and these people are part of the medical tourism people. But the medical tourism industry has not been structured. It doesn't have regulations as of now, but yes, the public and private sector are working on for medical tourism, and this is one sector which could probably in the next 5 years cross 11 billion mark. So there's a huge potential which is lying here, and which is one. Then I have expressed down is, the startup capital. If India has to move to the kind of younger generation we have, okay, the education community we have, okay, and to create any economy, the startup vision is big, and there are a lot of startups which you have seen, which have reached the level. And if you look into in education, Baiju today is, $1 billion entity in itself. E-learning, which was never thought that this kind of thing will serve this nation, is there. Similarly, e-pharmacy, which is actually an industry in itself in the world, people would like to do the convenience. And as the digitalization of money happens, okay, which was a good step which our government took over, yes, over a span of time, digital money will lead to e-commerce and the models which will go forward. Another which is important thing is that we as a nation, as I said, lifestyle diseases are the big taboo for us. We have diabetes, we are the diabetic capital of the world, the cardio issues are looming for us. Mental disorders are a big issue going forward. And the most important thing which has been missed, it is being talked about by the government. Some of the states have taken a very positive initiative, all right, is the women health care. If I say that if the lady's health is taken care in the right way, it's right from the base of the basic nutrition, all right, the whole family structure improves, right? Since masses of our tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the women, the literacy levels are low. Women, and if you look into, I come from a rural background, so I understand this aspect much better. A mother, before she becomes a mother, she is committed to her father's health. She gets into the rigmarole when she's married, she takes care of her husband's health. And as she bears children, she takes the children's role. She puts herself in the last. Right? If the mother is taken care, I am sure that the family will build itself on a very strong footage. Okay. Osteoporosis, which is, which leads to arthritis, is one of the biggest issues for the women because they as she lactates, the calcium content is practically missing. Okay, I'm just giving you a very simple example which is there. Then the issues of cancer, which was a rich man's disease. Okay, when you look into the West, it was unaffordable, even outside. Okay, we are today, the numbers what we have, 400,000 new patients came out in the state of Uttar Pradesh suffering from cancer. If I look into the state of Punjab, the districts of, the cotton growing districts of Gurdaspur, Sangrur, Faridkot, Firozpur and Bathinda, which is the cotton belt of, I would say, of Northwest, and same goes for Gujarat as well. The numbers are very, very large on cancer. So cancer working modules to see how the affordability can be brought in. These are the challenges. And then mental health, will become a very big challenge as the urbanization, people want to achieve everything overnight. People have to have the patience and work upon it to see how things will work upon it. Dr. Sharma, Brigadier Sharma, I will request you to take on the next question, please.
Thank you very much. Today's Times of India, where the CEO of Niti Yog, Mr. Amitabh Kant, has written a piece about the healthcare, which is he hopes will be the next driver of growth. And the first thing that he strongly recommends is strong primary healthcare system. Now, as you know, accessibility to healthcare is a major issue in India. Only 37% of the population, even less, has access to inpatient facilities within 5 kilometers of their home. Only 22% or just 2% of doctors practice in rural areas. As you already brought out, there's 1 is to 30,000, the ratio against 1 is to 1,000 of the WHO recommended. So how do we fix this, Dr. Sandhu? How do we progress and how do we take healthcare to the rural areas and the primary healthcare?
See, this is the most challenging aspect which you have touched. The government, our government in the past has invested sizably on the model. In the last 30 years, if you look into the numbers, which primary healthcare infrastructure was created. But PHC as a model is not a remunerative model in terms of earning. Because when we go into the arena of the tier 3 cities and the rural community in truest sense, right? A good doctor, because the numbers are limited again as per what the ratio we have in our nation. We have around about 30 for every 30,000 people, you have one single doctor. And the doctor wants to only work in the rural arena because he earns more money there, right? So the first step which the government has to do is that the government doctors which are employed in the government sector, they should be given a very high remunerative salary, okay, so that they feel motivated, they feel respected in the society, that yes, they need to work and contribute it back into our community in the rural area. Yeah. The bigger hospitals, you'll be very surprised if you look into the the Apollos or the Max or even the institute like Medanta, right? They are not making the kind of money capital which they have invested. And this is not my talk. This is the general discussion. If you sit on any of the forums of FICCI or CII or the international arena seminars which are looked upon, this is a big issue. Next is for the government to make sure that each district we should create low-cost medical colleges and support the universities to ensure that certain proportion of their candidates are doctors, and these doctors are then worked upon to see how the field of specialization could be done to create it. Then the big problem what we are seeing today is the doctors which are graduating from the premier institutes of India, because they are not getting a proper remuneration in our own nation, they tend to leave India and go for greener pastures in the Western world, right? If I tell you that the American Association of Physicians of Indian Association of Physicians, which is there are 125,000 Indian doctors working in the United States. For every 7th American, he gets treated by an Indian doctor, right? Because he earns more money there. And imagine if you bring that community down, our number will change, right? So a lot has to be done by the society, okay, in respecting, okay. The other thing which which we have as a council have requested the government is that the people who are retiring from the government at the age of 60 and doctors, they should be re-employed and brought back into the community. We can train, let's say, good pharmacists, okay, and they could probably educate the need of medicines. They can do the basic. A head nurse could be given a further qualification and a push that she could manage a primary and preventive healthcare system structure, or lease out these primary and preventive healthcares which are created by the government as base infrastructure on a long lease. And I'm very sure that the private sector will be willing to invest into that module and offer the services which could change the landscape going forward. So, there are various things which could be initiated to do that, and it could make, going back forward. And then the good thing part is that, our own wealth of our Ayurveda and yoga, okay, has to be cultivated further, deeper into the system. Okay, our basic medicines of Ayurveda can play a critical role in looking into the basic issues of health. If you look into China, this is a very good learning which we can imbibe upon. The traditional Chinese medicine still are supporting their own healthcare system by 33% as compared to the allopathy structure. We as a nation have not pushed the Ayurveda, which is our own science, and there is a lot of tangible wealth to support when we talk about Ayurveda, right? So that is missing, which can be done, and then, the role of the think tank leaders and thought imbibers which are there. If we can promote the social media message by getting certain Bollywood stars or getting key leaders in the society emphasizing what health is, why health is golden, it is the complete essence of life. I think it'll make a remarkable change to the society, and these are the kind of core programs to which will get the village level think tank changing and moving this vision to the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. If the tier 2 and tier 3 cities are built forward, it will make a lot of, I think, the corporate social responsibility, advantages which the government has, the corporate ministries have given, if they are pushed for 1 year or 2 years to only build the healthcare, I think it will change a larger way in pushing the vision of what we need in the key mass communities of our country.
Thank you, sir. We'll move slightly towards the insurance sector, towards the health insurance side. As you know, Ayushman Bharat is a national health protection scheme which will cover about 10 crore poor and vulnerable families. That's about 50 crore beneficiaries approximately. Each family will get a cover of about 5 lakh rupees per family per year for secondary and tertiary care and hospitalization. They can go to the public sector hospital or they can go to private sector hospitals. So what impact of this scheme do you see happening in the next 5 to 10 years? Also, a little bit about the Indian health insurance, which does not cover, OPD cover. So unless the insurance is in the hands of the people, the industry will not grow. So a little bit about Ayushman Bharat, sir, and a little bit about the health insurance sector in India.
I would say a great vision, thought, policy structuring has been done by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, in positioning the Ayushman Bharat on a national scale. There has been a success in certain states, but still the complete coordination between the large hospitals and the primary healthcare infrastructure has not been collated in the right spirit, okay, to ensure that the critical mass of the population is being looked into. But number two, the complete disbursement model of people getting medical care, surgeries, and the OPD structure is still being worked upon. And I think as we push this structure forward, it will definitely lay a great help and build a very robust structure for the needy community and the tier 2 and tier 3 and the rural population we have. If we are able to embark and build the rural population to the next level, I think the scheme which has been initiated will make tremendous value going forward. Now, coming down to the subject of the insurance sector, insurance sector needs great trust, okay, and the FDI structure which is currently there, right, has to be changed so that we could bring in larger players from the outside. Number two, we also have to change how the dispensing models have to be built, because still certain of the healthcare policies are not being reimbursed by every hospital structure. There is a misuse which is happening today in a great way, and that has resulted in some of the bigger boys, which were there in the insurance sector, moving out. Okay, LIC, which has played a very critical role in where we see, the healthcare structure. The term insurance, the basic term insurance, the basic, the packages which are there, they are being built, but the mental makeup of the people which are working upon in the health sector, the insurance agents, they are looked upon by the community. But trust me, this is one of the biggest services which has to be given a positive part, that yes, what they're adding is what they're caring it. And I'm very sure that the way the negative problems what we are facing on COVID, it will definitely add to the mental makeup, that people will start and people will have realized and will realize going forward more, that they have to either go, if they can afford, with the private sector, or they will register themselves and seek the support which comes under Ayushman Bharat. If you look into the kind of a practice which the local Delhi government did of the Mohalla clinics, right, they are to a certain extent a success, right. Vending machines for basic medicines, have been established. Doctor infrastructure is there. I think if that model is successful in Delhi to some extent, we need to cut down the borders of the political arena, but use the wealth which has been there to building that into a low-cost structure, either under the umbrella of Ayushman Bharat, or along with special schemes with insurance sector, okay, to serve our community and create the message that yes, the need of the hour is there and we need to do it. Brigadier.
Sir, thank you very much. I'll now come to a very basic question, and that is, it is suggested that the government should invest in health, so that it reduces the future expenditure towards healthcare. So that is investing in preventive health, good health for the people in the school days, young days. So what do you suggest? How should the government and the country go into it? How to invest in health rather than healthcare?
See, the first foremost thought is, to structure an independent ministry. Today, the pharma sector has its own ministry or an independent department. Ayush has its own. The first mental makeup has to become at a national level. Right. Number two is the regulatory compliance. We need to improve the standards of our manufacturing in India. You must have heard in the news, or must have read, or must have discussed, or seen at various debates, that the mental people think, oh, the medicine which is being sold outside in United Kingdom, you'll feel proud that 90% of the medicines which get dispensed in the government or the private sector hospitals in United Kingdom are coming from India. Right, because we are affordable, right? But on the other side, if you and I have to buy a medicine, we will probably go and buy a product coming out of either Cipla or Dr. Reddy's or Sun Pharma, okay? But there is a lot of manufacturing which happens across various cities. The good management practices which I said are not being adhered. So people talk about that in India we have dual manufacturing standards, right? So one is the superior superior manufacturing what we export out of India. The second is a Me Too product which we call the generic gets manufactured. So we today have over 20,000 manufacturing plants in India. I personally feel that going forward probably it will have 5,000, because compliances in the healthcare have to be incorporated by the government, because inspector. The drug regime structure has to be a national decision making by the government. It cannot be done by the private sector. The most important thing is compliance. Okay, number one. Number two, the loan, either the funding by the banks, okay, has to be on a low rate of interest to support the healthcare sector. Okay, because money, the capital has to be invested, right? It can be invested in either hospitals, either in medical colleges, in either collaborations with institutes, right, educational institutes to imbibe, pharmacy colleges, pharmacists which are required, the nursing ability which is missing, the paramedics. So that sector has to be built in. We are still facing a huge paucity of even nurses. Forget paramedics. We have 53 institutes of paramedics in India. But if we actually evaluate them, only 4 of them are producing paramedics of the right caliber, right? We have to invest in basic infrastructure because that goes missing. Number 2, FDI, foreign direct investment, which has, changed, okay, in a greater way, has to be made 100% in the healthcare. When I say healthcare, I'm talking of, bigger boys in the world coming forward. That is there. Then basic R&D, research and development. Until is not there, nothing will move. Lastly, intellectual property. Respect to intellectual property, is very important. Companies or governments which have built systems, technologies, they are willing to share because the common areas is benefit to the mankind. If the world has got united now on COVID. If you see, everybody is talking of where the vaccine will manufacture, blah blah blah, all this kind of thing. Now that mental makeup for intellectual property respect will drive. There are companies, there are many, governments which are willing to support India, but we do not respect the intellectual property regime. Okay, the policy structuring has to change. The very large, you'll be very surprised if you look into the blood plasma story, which is being talked about. The blood bank system is still not structured in our country. These are policies which have been there for the last 40 years. We have not changed them. We need to change them. Yes, our government is doing great work in working upon one step by the step, but the trust has to be brought in to make sure that these such changes are brought in, and that will then result in larger investment in the sector to take it forward. We as a nation have shown to the world that we are a capable producer in terms of basic medicine, the generic. We are the largest producers of suppliers of 70% of the vaccines in the world, right? But the mental makeup has to be more. Capacity building as an issue. If you talk with the US FDA, which is the global regulator for US, and it commands great respect in every nation. If your product or your manufacturing infrastructure or even a hospital for that matter, or for a medical device infrastructure plant is FDA approved, it gets an accessibility to over 200 countries, right? The only question which they want to discuss today is, can the capacity building be built forward? They would like to work with India, but for capacity building, again, the taboo comes in the cost of capital. The cost of capital still is around about 8.5%, 9%. I'm talking of an average number across the SMEs as well. Forget the larger boys can reduce the capital, base, but for the SMEs which will drive this larger structure in our nation, that has to be done, and larger trust has to be created in each state. If you look into Uttar Pradesh, for that matter, being the 5th largest population country in the world, if you look into after, the local government has now come forward, okay, and is laying the foundation to create, pharmaceutical parks, get into medical parks infrastructure. They want to have longevity connections on the basic research. If we talk upon this, the policy has to be, each state will have to do something different because the need is not central, it is the need of the state. So all these things, if they can be devolved, I think there will be a positive track, and if the positive track takes place, it impacts the entire system. India as a market changes totally and brings the thrust to every side of the economy.
Thank you, sir. We'll go into a question about the future and about innovation. As you would know, sir, healthcare organizations face challenges to improve quality, reduce harm, improve access, costs. So innovation is becoming a major focus. What are the big drivers of healthcare innovation in India, sir? Because that is one thing which is very important for healthcare in India, the innovation.
See, innovation is a direct scenario to basic research, promoting startup, base startup companies, respecting what talent is there, and then the FDI. Money is available, capital is available outside. If I'll give you a very peculiar example of Japan. This particular community after the World War II has created the base infrastructure. The average age of a female in Japan is 90 years and a male is 89. Okay. If you compare with your nation, today has touched 57 and 59 in India. We were 12 years back, we were in the late 40s. Okay. Now, when you look at a longevity of life is a derivative based on how the public and the governments are looking at it. Okay. The longer you live, the structures are there. Right, more earning into the system moves on. Okay, more cultivation of economy drives it. We have to bring in large scale, as we've been talking in your previous subject. Private entrepreneurship has to be encouraged in a very large way in the medical arena. Okay, we have to build and the need of more people in the nursing infrastructure, in the paramedic infrastructure, right? And doing that, right? Then the most important thing is respecting our Ayurveda science, okay, which makes it much more affordable as compared to allopathy, okay, because that can really push the system very hard, because affordability in our community in terms of earning versus what is required in the healthcare will be which has to be pushed in. Okay. Then large scale structuring of education of healthcare is required, which is being done, but not being done in a very serious intent, which is a role which can be done. Then lastly, to rebuild the primary and preventive healthcare, which is the cheapest way because infrastructure is there, okay, but to do that, the private and public long lease infrastructure is required, where the government says, okay, fine, either you invest and you are there for the next 50 years to cultivate the bandwidth, then only this model can be remunerated. If the model is that yes, you invest today and you earn tomorrow, in the healthcare it is not same, because the medical science is progressing on a daily basis. A medical equipment, if you install today, you've seen I'll give a very simple example of, your X-ray infrastructuring machines. They are changing by the day. Okay, you can do, as I shared earlier, gene therapy. You will be able to evaluate where my problem is. Gene mutation. These are big words, but yes, the scientific bandwidth will realize. There is a research which says today, why are Indians diabetic more than an African? The basic structure of education, if I know that, yes, is known, you people will start preventing that problem which will come in. It's a very common thing in India that, a lady, has a knee problem more than a gentleman. The issue of osteoporosis, okay, because there is a calcium, if you see the Ganges plain, if you read more, if you get into the Central Asia region down to the Ganges plain, there in the soil, the calcium intake just goes away. So that's why the problem of osteoporosis is big in India. It's big in Afghanistan, it is big in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan and India. But it is not there in Bangladesh. Right? So the analytical ability, the digital understanding, the artificial intelligence, role of artificial intelligence has to be brought in and worked upon areas which will get the accessibility to the public at an affordable cost. That is how we can educate people. And a tremendous work has to be done in by the states, by the center, and with a collaborative approach with the private sector. That is the only way forward. Because until we don't thrust it down top to bottom and bottom to up, we will not be there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have so many questions, and there are so many questions from the audience, but we are running against time. And when we have an expert, an experienced person like you, there is no end to the questions. But then again, we have to keep in mind the time. I thank you on my behalf, sir, for such a wonderful session with you. I'll now request Dr. Nitin Batra to say a few words and also vote of thanks before we bring this session to an end. Over to Dr. Nitin, sir.
Thank you, Brigadier Sharma, and thank you so much, of course, Dr. Sandhu, for the insights that you shared. I kept an eye actually on the questions, so thank you, Sakshi and Bhushan, for sharing your questions amongst others. You did answer the questions, so Brigadier Sharma, I think the description by Dr. Sandhu was comprehensive enough for those questions to be covered. And I think the way I understood it, you are a great student as well as an exponent of systems thinking, which we practice, which I practice as a strategist for companies. When you look at the whole thing as a system, both from awareness driven by science and data, reaching to the last woman or man. You also talked about diagnostics. You talked about healthcare delivery. And in each of these three areas, you talked about what are the urgent as well as the long-term initiatives that the country needs to take. Thank you also for sharing international insights, which are always helpful to push as well as themes for innovation. So I learned a lot, Dr. Sandhu, with your talk. All I can say is that we wish we had more time. So, at the risk of committing you, we would love to have you again sometime in the future, whenever it's convenient to you, to dive deeper into some of the themes that emerged out of this discussion. Thank you so much, Dr. Sandhu, for your time.
Thank you very much, and let's look forward to add value to our nation. And the most important is building Uttar Pradesh where you are based, because if our UP as a state grows to the level which we require, I think it will definitely impact on the GDP of a nation and change the longevity what we require for a better healthcare and a better quality of living. Thank you very much, Brigadier Sharma, and for all your kind support. And let's hope so that we meet very soon. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We are with you in your vision. Thank you so much.